episode are we on? I think we're episode. Is this 9? Week 9, right? I think so. I don't know. Don't hold me to it. I think it's 9. I'm pretty sure. Of our book club, we're gonna be talking about third circle theory. So I'm gonna be talking about the last circle, which is the third circle. Naz and I are gonna be talking about Nietzsche. Andrew's gonna be talking about the Dunning-Kruger effect. Soroy's gonna be talking about the lean startup, and Ruben's gonna be talking about virtual reality. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. It's okay.
Sure, go ahead, Naz. Take it away.
Okay, so Nietzsche explains that psychology before him, they were blinded by their psychological ventures, by not only an unquestioned acceptance of social beliefs and moral standards, but more significantly, a fear of exploring the depths of within themselves. Furthermore, that all psychology so far has got hung up on moral prejudice and fears. Uh, it has not dared to descend into the depths of the mind. He believed that the psyche is to be multidimensional and possessing a complexity which renders total and complete knowledge of it impossible. Most individuals, fearing the complex depths within, remain at a superficial and surface layer of their psyche. However, he also explains that a fear of descending into the depths of one's psyche is not unfounded, and that it is why it it is why that it is something that not everyone must undertake. Um, for those that lack sufficient courage and are ungifted in psychological investigations, a voluntary descent into the inner foundations of one's mind could engender temporary, or in some rare cases, permanent madness. Um, and that the venture of this inner world of human mind enters a labyrinth and multiplies a thousandfold the dangers that life in itself brings with it, of which not the least is that nobody can. Sorry, I'm kind of lost here. One sec.
That's okay.
Um,
Can you pump up your mic just a little bit? Is there any way you can
yeah,
do that?
yeah. Let me try here. Is this better?
Oh, that's a lot better. Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully it's not too loud. Okay.
No, 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 it's good.
Um, sorry, I just took notes here. Just a little lost. So I'll just reread that. The vent the adventurer of this inner world of human um, enters a labyrinth and multiplies a thousandfold the dangers that life in itself brings with it, of which not the least is that nobody can see how and where he loses his way, becomes solitary, and is torn into pieces by the metaphorical minotaur of the conscience. The psyche of a small minority of individuals, in comparison with that of the overwhelming mass, is constituted by both greater depths and a higher degree of turmoil. To ensure that they are not torn apart by the contradictions, conflicts, and abysses within, such individuals are driven inward to explore and impose order of their psyche by fashioning and sculpting themselves into a harmonious totality. To fashion oneself does not mean to form oneself out of nothing. As humans, we cannot be fashioned in any way we please. According to Nietzsche, each of us has a deep and abiding nature of which places definite set limits on who and what we can become. Uh, he quote his quote says, "At the bottom of us, really deep down, there is, of course, something unteachable, some granite of spiritual fathom, of predetermined decision and answer to predetermined selected questions. Whenever a cardinal problem is at stake, there speaks an unchangeable 'This is I.'" Um, that was the quote. Our nature is sculpted not only by early life experiences and the traits and dispositions inherited from our ancestors, but also, according to Nietzsche, by historical forces. The traditions and experiments um, of past cultures continue to live on within us, influencing our life experience uh, from the deeper layers of our psyche. Um, the past of every form and way of life of cultures that formerly lay right next to or on top of each other now flows into us modern souls. Our drives now run back everywhere. We ourselves are kind of a chaos. Given that the past of every form and way of life continues to live on in us, Nietzsche proposed that we need to engage in an active exploration of history if we are only to attain self-knowledge. Um, Direct self-observation is not nearly sufficient for us to know ourselves. We need history, for the past flows on within us in 100 ways. Um, just as the past continues to live on in modern cultures, embodied in myths, traditions, institutions, so too our psyche has been shaped and sculpted by past ages. The tendency of the modern individual to feel he has been arbitrarily thrown and abandoned into the absurd world is the direct result of lacking what Nietzsche called a historical sense of self. Um, a historical sense of having no conscious connection to the past and therefore failing to dig one's roots through the strata of history. That's pretty much all I have right now, but it's basically talking about how most people don't want to dive into their deeper inner sense of self. Um, uh, they sit at the more superficial layer, and that it's a very hard thing to do. Um, uh, but like explaining third circle theory, that uh, to to actually master, I guess, the third circle theory, you really need to figure a lot of this stuff out, like why you do stuff, uh, uh, like what drives you, like what you actually are in a sense. Yeah, that's basically it. Sorry.
That's cool. If you guys don't mind, can I go next? Because it kind of just finishes off or continues off of what Naz was talking about with both Third Circle and Nietzsche. Um, if that's cool.
It works for me, yeah.
Cool. Um, all right. Well, here before I start, Bryce redeemed something in the channel for read to me, so I'm gonna read a quick 40-second excerpt from the book that Soroy actually shouted out last week, The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. And so today's December 27th. This one's super short, and it's Bryce. Here you go if you're listening. It's December 27th. Don't let your soul go first. So this is a quote from Marcus Aurelius. It's a disgrace in this life when the soul surrenders first while the body refuses to. So despite his privileges, Marcus Aurelius had a difficult life. The Roman historian Cassius Dio mused that Marcus did not meet with the good fortune that he deserved, for he was not strong in body and was involved in a multitude of troubles throughout practically his entire reign. At one point, he was so sick that a rumor spread that he had died, and matters were made worse when his most trusted general used it as an opportunity to declare himself as the new emperor. Throughout all these struggles, the years at war, crippling illnesses, his troubled son, he never gave up. It's an inspiring example for us to think about today if we get tired, frustrated, or have to deal with some crisis. Here's a guy who had every reason to be angry and bitter, who could have abandoned his principles and lived in luxury or ease, who could have put his responsibilities aside and focused on his own health, but he never did. His soul stayed strong even after his body became weak. He never gave up, right up to the second until his body finally did, when he died near Vienna in 180 AD. There you go, Bryce. I thought that was a cool thing, actually. It's really important. Like they say, even when you're working out, like when you think you're done, you still got like 40. You're only like 40% done, or something like that. I don't know. Basically, it says that you got more in you than you think you do. And in fact, I see this all the time, especially coming to the age that we're at. You're starting to see people get sick. You're starting to see grandparents pass away, unfortunately. And a lot of times, what happens is a lot of folks actually die earlier than they can survive, or earlier than they. You get what I'm saying. I didn't say it the greatest way, but they die earlier than they should because they give up. Whether they lose their spouse, right, or they kind of just lose whatever will they have to survive, they end up passing away earlier. So it's important to always, like Sroy or like Naz said, kind of find that why and keep going. And if you lose your why, then that's okay. Just reset and figure out another one. And so okay, I'm gonna go into the third circle of the third circle theory because I talked about the second circle last week. Um, I was just about to say last year because we're at the last we're at the last week of the year. So it's broken up into four sections, which is lifestyle, vision, entrepreneur, and legacy. And so, okay, so we already talked about legacy last week. I kind of went over it, and it's like, you don't go through legacy with your children and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of the last, piece of the pie. But the first three are kind of important. So the first one, I'm just going to kind of zip through them, is lifestyle, right? So the important thing is once you kind of reach the third circle, work life balance is no longer a thing, right? It's just like you just acknowledge that you have life, right? And you have a human need to balance what you do with why you do it. And again, this doesn't mean that you just go work all day long. That's not what it means. But it's, you no longer have to kind of separate yourself from work because it's a method of suffering. It's actually something that you enjoy doing. And now, that also you do need to like give yourself some rest. So I need to differentiate between those two things. But the whole purpose of it is you're doing purposeful things that have a larger meaning than just, hey, I need to do this to make money and provide for my family and myself. During lifestyle, by when you reach the third circle, you've already mastered society, so you should know how to, make enough money to kind of live comfortably. But if you live comfortably and don't push yourself to find your meaning, and create meaning in your life, you stay in the second circle. So it's really important to acknowledge that at this point, yes, you've mastered society, and yes, you've accumulated a good amount of wealth, but that doesn't mean that you're kind of done. You know what I mean? That only means that you've gotten past the game of society, which is the second circle. Now, as a result of accumulating that wealth, you're able to travel, which exposes yourself to different experiences and lifestyles. And because you've mastered society, this lifestyle opens doors for you so that you can be granted access to new worlds containing new information, which enables you to think globally and expand past your current limits. um, the next piece of the pie, the second piece of the third circle, is vision. So you start envisioning what the world could be, and that's kind of like a habit that you always look at. Hey, this could be like this, and you don't just accept what everything is around you for what it is. And you don't just look at things, in your current town or state. You kind of start thinking globally. And you seek to take advantage of missing links and filling any gaps or bridging those gaps to bring value that's everlasting. The vision, like a vision, isn't like a dream. It's a look through the what if lens based on your experiences, and it's kind of like a roadmap to life for your life goal. Navigating without it will be difficult, so it's important that you acknowledge that you want to develop this lens of looking through. Hey, what if this is like this? Okay, this is how things have always been done in this kind of area of my life. What if it looked like this? Would that be of value to me and other people? Vision is about believing in the what if you can see, combined with the belief described in the first circle, which comes from enough information to create curiosity and acceptance of the information. If you live in the third circle, you're more aware and capable than those in the first. You've mastered the ability to act rather than react. So again, being proactive, and you're no longer a byproduct of your environment. You don't just sit there waiting for things to happen to you. The third section is entrepreneur. Again, the book is about entrepreneurship, but the important thing is you don't need to be a successful business person to be in the third circle. It's kind of a way of life. But again, the book is created for an entrepreneurship academy, so they're gonna reference that every now and then, right? So you realize that you can't spend the rest of your life building other people's dreams. You feel that you're too valuable from a mindset standpoint to take orders from individuals who don't understand you or your capacity. Now, again, this isn't from a cockiness perspective. You need to have a track record, which is where you get confidence from. You want to see, and this doesn't mean that you're better than that other person. It just means that you're thinking a different way, and they're not able to value that as a result of not seeing that in you. You want to, and again, this is a very like, it's a very like, what's the word, brittle path to walk on, because a lot of people might think this way, but they're not actually in the third circle. So it's really crucial to audit yourself, and understand where you're coming from. Um, So you want to seek more out of life instead of confining yourself in your comfort zone. That's huge too, right? You want to continuously push yourself out of your comfort zone despite already attaining success. And entrepreneurship in the context of the third circle is about innovation and advancement, not self-employment. So that could be about innovating and advancing yourself before you create some sort of a vehicle that creates a legacy. Innovation is the driver of entrepreneurship, and it's about giving birth to something new. And so again, legacy, we talked about it last week real quick. It's it's not about hey, a lot of people, you might hear this from a lot of people, and again, that was in the last video, so I don't want to spend too much time about it. But a lot of people think that legacy has to originate from like having children. But it actually doesn't have anything to do with your children, nor does it have anything to do with your religious beliefs or practices, because children don't always carry your name in the way you want to be remembered, and it's unfair to expect them to win when you failed by giving up. Children have no relevance to your legacy. They create their own, which will differ from yours, so it'll mean nothing to your future. So again, to close off the legacy piece, what you have or don't have does not dictate whether you're remembered or not. What you have or don't have is not a measure of your success or a measure of your intelligence or mindset. It is nothing more than your success rate at mastering the game of society, not the game of life. Legacy is really, what you're going to be remembered for in like intangible or tangible, whether you create a company or you help X amount of people through A, B, and C, whatever that is. And so just to close off the book itself, the third circle theory is about removing yourself from the equation and not placing yourself in the center of it. And it's being able to provide feedback from a third person perspective. And that's what it is, right? So when, again, I went over this a couple times before, when something happens, right, and you're reacting to it emotionally, you really take 2 steps back, remove yourself from the equation, and kind of look at yourself as if you're like a ghost watching you in that situation, and really auditing how would you like to react, how would you like yourself to react in this situation to get the most optimal outcome, right? So if you're in a club and someone punches you, your reaction is to say something back or hit them back, but there's no real optimal result that comes out of that. So sometimes people punch the other guy back, get into a fight, get put into jail or whatever, and be like, fuck, I shouldn't have done that. Or they're just like, no, I don't regret it. But really, like, if you were able to remove yourself from the equation, look at the situation, and know, like, in hindsight, okay, if I did that, if I last time I did this and it resulted in that, this is how I would change that. And being able to do that live is what the third circle is about. And it's also a mindset. So pre third circle, you think success equals good choices or failure equals bad choices. The mindset post third circle is choice plus action equals success. The next part I wanted to talk about is kind of the next lesson after Naz's piece in our boot camp, and it's really about like psychology and Nietzsche. So he talks about something kind of cool, interesting, I thought, was he says that the dominant morality in the West, according to him, is like an anti-natural morality. So aka it turns against the instincts of life. He says that like it's the biggest danger of all, and the issue is that like it's basically like a mindset of the majority of people, which compromises what's called the herd mentality. And he says that even those who are capable of rising above become part of it, and then it leads into like the fall of man. And so he says they take 2 steps back and said there's 2 types of people, right? There's the higher human beings and then those who belong in the herd. So he talks about the higher human beings and breaks them down into 2 different people. So the first is creative geniuses. So these are people of great creativity with nature and nurture, and a combination of those 2 things. They're able to bless humans with astounding works of beauty, right? So, like creative geniuses, think of Mozart, you think of Picasso, Michelangelo, all those folks. And it doesn't just need to be about art. It could be, the art of war. What's that guy's name? Sun Tao or something like that. Yeah, that kind of stuff, right? These are more prevalent higher humans. So these individuals tap into some sort of creative niche that they've got, and they're able to develop that and create a legacy that lives past their mortal lives. Then there's the more prevalent higher humans. So these people are hidden from the public eye. Their lives are without songs and singers. They're, people don't like recognize them. But their lives aren't actually very different from the creative geniuses because they both share traits that separate them from the herd. And they have like kind of like a unifying project in life. They're consumed by this project, which again is not undertaken for short-term gratification. They know that this project, whatever they're working on, or their why, quote unquote, is beyond their current life. The goal of this project, its physical effects, is again going to remain past their mortal lifespan, and they tend to stand alone and live independently. And this higher man or woman remains oblivious to the petty concerns which occupy the herd. So the stuff that the herd kind of often is complaining about or talking about, they've distanced themselves from that because they know that it doesn't really bring value to their life and the way they live it. This higher human being and the creative geniuses, they're immune to both the praise and criticisms emanating from the mouths of the many. So that's the important thing. Not only are they able to ignore the criticisms of the herd, they also ignore the praise because they know that kind of might knock them off their horse, right? So there's a solitude within him that is inaccessible to praise or blame, and his own justice that is beyond appeal. There's a quote here, and again, this kind of like Nietzsche's, he was alive a long time ago, so it's not like our version of formal English, but the modern individual focuses too narrowly on his own short lifespan and wants to pluck the fruit himself from the tree he plants. So no longer likes to plant those trees that demand a century of constant tending and are intended to provide shade for long successions of generations. So again, the majority of people only think about what they can do to maximize their own lifestyle. They don't look at how can I make sure that I can make a positive impact and quote unquote plant a tree that can provide shade for generations to come, not just for me. The second kind of person, right, other than again the higher human being, the second one is what he calls the slave. And the slave is someone who suffers from what he calls a resentment, and this individual really suffers from themselves. So they fester hatred of life, and it's generated by feelings of impotence in the race of an external reality felt to be overpowering and threatening. So again, these are people, and this is kind of like the common person. They're victims of their circumstances. And so here's another quote from Nietzsche. He says, there's among men, as in every other animal species, an excess of failures of the sick, degenerating, infirm, who suffer necessarily. The successful cases are, among men too, always the exception. So basically, like in the animal kingdom, you'll see, animals that are sick and either are born with a defect or something like that. And again, I'm not talking about humans that are born with defects. I don't think that's okay, and that's a completely different conversation. Let's just look at the animal kingdom, okay? If a lion is born with a one leg or something like that, the chances of it surviving are a lot less. Conversely, if there's a deer or a gazelle that's sick, when the whole herd is running, the sick one's going to get picked off, right? And so what Nietzsche is saying is that unfortunately, like these folks who are the slave, quote unquote, who are slaves to themselves and their circumstances, they're these sick gazelles that get picked off. But the unfortunate thing is the majority of the Western society is like that, according to Nietzsche. So he says that the slave has feelings of envy towards anyone that doesn't suffer as they do, right? So if I'm a slave and other people aren't suffering like me, I envy those people. And the only type of power that the slave has is coming together to take vengeance against higher humans and gaining a communal group of power. So they feel powerless, and so they start joining together with other folks that are thinking like them to bring down the higher humans. So they call for equality and try to bring down those above them, saying, hey, that's not fair. Those people are bad. Those people are evil. They should be on the same playing field as us. And so the issue with that is that it's a reverse of like the natural evolution of life, because this herd mentality is bringing down the individuals that are actually looking to evolve and progress mankind, according to Nietzsche again. So last quote I got here is, the morality that would unself man is the morality of decline par excellence. The fact, I am declining, transposed into the imperative, all of you ought to decline. this only morality that has been taught so far, that of unselfing, reveals a will to the end. Fundamentally, it negates life. So again, that's just his way of saying what I just kind of described. Probably should have said the quote first, but it is what it is. Um, he says that this inverts the natural values of life. Herd morality inverts natural values of life, and it shuns growth and independence, and is seen as evil by the herd. And the vengeful individuals that do this are disguised as judges and seen as good in Western society, which is unfortunate. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. And again, I know it's a little intense, and you got to take it for what it is. You got to take it with a grain of salt. Um, but that was what I learned, and I thought that was kind of interesting. And it was good to just kind of take two steps back when you react to something, and really think: is this serving me? Am I knocking someone else down? Is this progressing my life and allowing me to adapt and evolve, or am I going with the masses just for the sake of going with the masses? But yeah, that's what I had for this week. Who wants to go next?
I can go next if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Awesome. So I was listening to a podcast by The Economist, and they were discussing a point where sometimes people try to answer questions that they're not knowledgeable in. An example would be giving directions, although you're not totally sure about them. For me, when people ask me directions that I don't know, I just check Google and I show them for them to see themselves. But if someone asks me a question about cars, a topic that I think I know a fair amount about, I never hesitate to try and answer the question. But when I'm not totally sure, I always tell them how to find out the answer themselves. An example would be is, let's say my friend's car was making a clunking noise when they turned the steering wheel. I would say it may be a suspension issue. Don't worry too much about it. Hopefully, it's small. Just have your family mechanic check it out as soon as possible. Even though I'm not totally sure, I'll still try and give an answer. But I also have the disclaimer on how to find the correct answer in case I'm wrong. But am I trying to help answer the car question because I have justified knowledge in the field, or because I've overestimated my knowledge in the field? So this is related to the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is what I ended up researching this week. So the Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias in which people with low ability at a task overestimate their ability. It is related to the cognitive bias of illusory superiority, and comes from people's inability to recognize their lack of ability. Without the self-awareness of metacognition, people cannot objectively evaluate their level of competence. I've been guilty of this in the past, and I'm sure we all know people who've been guilty in it as well. The easiest example I can think of was when I was younger, I had dropped some money while sitting on a gazebo with a patio floor. And like patio floors have like um, pieces of wood, and there's a small space in between them so that you can drop stuff in between the floorboards. So the money was dangling. So I found some sticks, and I was gonna like try and carefully like raise the money out from between the wood boards. But then when I found the sticks, my friend grabbed the sticks from me and said, "I can do it." And he proceeded to try and pull the money out. But what happened was he actually pushed the money further in until we could no longer access it. My friend was subject to a cognitive bias of illusory superiority, thinking he could do it better than me. Who knows? Maybe I would have done the same thing. And he overestimated his ability to retrieve the money. So that's an example of that. The psychological phenomenon of illusory superiority was identified as a form of cognitive bias in Kruger's and Dunning's 1999 study, Unskilled and Aware of It: How Difficulties in Recognizing One's Own Incompetence Leads to Inflated Self-Assessments. The identification derived from the criminal case of MacArthur Wheeler, who on April 19th, 1995, robbed two banks while his face was covered with lemon juice, which he believed would make it invisible to surveillance cameras. The belief was based on his misunderstanding of the chemical properties of lemon juice as invisible ink. So the bank robber Wheeler overestimated his ability to understand how invisible ink worked, which led him to overestimate his ability to competently rob a bank. And he has a low ability to complete the task and overestimated his ability to do so. So it's described by David Dunning and Justin Kruger. That's their full names in case you guys want to Google them. The bias results from an internal illusion in people of low ability and from an external misperception in people of high ability. That is, the miscalibration of the incompetent stems from an error about the self, whereas the miscalibration of the highly competent stems from an error about others. Um, if you're incompetent, you can't know you're incompetent. The skills you need to produce a right answer are exactly the skills you need to recognize what is a right answer.
Sorry.
So,
Wait. Can we just take 1 second there just to acknowledge that? So this guy put lemon juice on his face and thought it would make him invisible.
yeah, because he misunderstood how invisible ink and lemon juice works.
What's his name?
The robber's name was MacArthur Wheeler.
When was this?
That was in 1995.
That's actually amazing. Like, why does he not have any friends who can be like, yo, can we test this? Okay, sorry, I just thought that was hilarious. Please continue.
Yeah, but we all do this on like a micro scale all the time.
And
Yeah,
you know
so-
what? That example that you gave of the money, like I literally put the mirror in front of my face and like, man, like, and Andrew has called me this in the past, and he called me a cocky POS, where it's like, yo, I can do this. Sometimes I actually make it happen. It's like, oh fuck, okay, you did it. But other times it's like, oh yeah, I fucked up. So sorry, someone else was saying something.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, even if his friends told him something, that's what the Kruger effect, Dunning-Kruger effect is basically he'll probably not even like believe them. He's probably just gonna think, you know what, these guys are idiots. I'm gonna put lemon juice on my face and it's gonna work.
That makes
No?
sense. Wow, cool. Thanks for wrapping that up. Go ahead. Sorry, like wrapping it up in terms of like helping me understand it a little further. But Andrew, go ahead. But thank you for sharing that. It was amazing.
Yeah, so we're gonna get more to like people's effectiveness on understanding criticism. We'll get to that shortly. Because exactly, if his friends would have told him, would he have listened? Okay, so another study named "Why People Fail to Recognize Their Own Incompetence" showed that much incorrect self-assessment of competence derives from the person's ignorance of a given activity's standard of performance. So basically, if you don't know how something's judged or you don't know what standard is good and bad, then you're not gonna be able to make a good assessment of yourself. It also indicated that training in a task such as solving a logic puzzle increases people's ability to accurately evaluate how good they are at it. So, for example, if I'm trained in a logic puzzle or trained in problem solving, I will know that puzzles take me a really long time. And if someone gives me a new puzzle, I'll know that I'm slow at puzzles, and then I can set their expectation and my expectation more accurately that the puzzle is going to take me a long time. But if I wasn't trained on puzzles and I was given my first one, I would have no idea on my ability, and I may over or underestimate my ability to complete the puzzle. In 2011, Dunning also wrote that about his observations that people with substantial measurable deficits in their knowledge or expertise lack the ability to recognize those deficits, and therefore, despite potentially making an error, sorry, and despite potentially making error after error, tend to think they're performing competently when they are not. In short, those who are incompetent, for lack of a better term, should have little insight into their incompetence, an assertion that came to be known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. Um, in 2014, Dunner and Hauser described that the Dunning-Kruger effect suggests that poor performers are not in a position to recognize the shortcomings in their performance. So let's say, Ruben brought this up. So let's say that there was a foreign leader that was a poor performer and made mistake after mistake. The Dunning-Kruger effect suggests that the poor performer is not in the position to recognize their shortcomings in performance. Um, Dunning and Kruger tested the hypothesis of the cognitive bias of illusory superiority on undergraduate students of introductory courses in psychology by examining the students' self-assessments and their intellectual skills in inductive, deductive, and abductive logical reasoning, English grammar, and personal sense of humor. After learning their self-assessment scores, the students were asked to estimate their ranks in the psychology class, in another class. The competent students underestimated their class rank, and the incompetent students overestimated theirs. but the incompetent students did not estimate their rank as higher than the ranks estimated by the competent group. So basically, the students who performed lower, they overestimated their own ability, but they weren't delusional. They knew that their ability wasn't better than the higher performing students. Across 4 studies, the research indicated that the study participants who scored in the bottom quartile on tests of their sense of humor, knowledge of grammar, and logical reasoning, overestimating their test performance and their ability. Despite test scores that placed them in the 12th percentile, the participants estimated that they ranked in the 62nd percentile. Moreover, competent students tended to underestimate their own competence because they erroneously presumed that tasks easy for them to perform were also easy for other people to perform. Incompetent students proved their ability to estimate their class rank correctly after receiving minimal tutoring in the skills that they previously lacked, regardless of any objective improvement gained in said skills or perception. So again, training in different fields help people understand how they actually perform. So going back to this, if incompetent people are overestimating their ability and competent people are underestimating their ability, this means that across competent and incompetent people, both groups of people are incorrectly assessing their abilities. So, to test this, the Dunning-Kruger hypothesis that people at all performance levels are equally poor at estimating their relative performance, they made a study called Skilled or Unskilled, but Still Unaware of It: How Perceptions of Difficulty Drive Miscalibration in Relative Comparisons. They did 3 studies that manipulated the perceived difficulty of the tasks and the participants' belief about their relative standing. The investigation indicated that the experimental subjects were presented with moderately difficult tasks. There was little variation among the best performers and the worst performers in their ability to predict the performance accurately. With more difficult tasks, the best performers were less accurate in predicting their performance than the worst performers. So, therefore, judges at all levels of skill are subject to similar degrees of error in performance of tasks. In testing alternative explanations for the cognitive bias of illusionary superiority, the study Why the Unskilled Are Unaware reached the same conclusion as previous studies of the Dunning-Kruger effect, that in contrast to high performers, poor performers do not learn from feedback suggesting a need to improve. So this goes back to the gentleman who's robbing the bank. He was a poor performer, and even if his friends told him, he might not have learned from their feedback suggesting that he needed to improve. There was another author named Tal Yarkoni. Their studies suggested that their studies categorically, he's talking about the Dunning-Kruger effect and his perspective of the results. Their studies categorically didn't show that incompetent people are more confident or arrogant than incompetent people. What they did show is that people in the top quartile for actual performance think that they're better than people in the second quartile, who think that they perform better than people in the third quartile, and so on and so on. So the bias is definitively not that incompetent people think that they're better than competent people. Rather, it's that incompetent people think that they're much better than they actually are. But they typically don't think that they're quite as good as people who, are actually good. It's important to note that Dunning-Kruger never claimed to show that the unskilled think that they're better than the skilled. That's just the way the finding is often interpreted by others. So going back to it, like, the lower performing students thought that they performed better than they did, but they didn't think that they were better than the higher performing students. They still knew that they were lower. So that's what the author Tao Yarkoni was talking about. This means that the friend who pushed the money further into under the gazebo didn't necessarily think that he could retrieve the money better than me. He just thought that he could perform the task better than he actually could. Another finding was that in general, women were better at self-assessment than men. The reason I found this topic of the Dunning-Kruger effect so fascinating was due to my own self-reflection. How do I estimate my own ability? When I estimate I will perform well in an activity, is it justified confidence due to previous good performances, or is it a lack of insight into my own ability? I've experienced both of these myself, so I want to put the subject out there so we can all be true to ourselves. If the answer isn't what we like, we can change it. Um, so, are there any solutions to the Dunning-Kruger effect in low performers not overestimating their ability to complete a task? So they asked us to David Dunning, are there any solutions or tools that we can use? And he said, um, people who think not in terms of certainties, but in terms of probabilities, tend to do much better in forecasting and anticipating what is going to happen in the world than people who think in certainties. But that's only a start. What you need to do is take home the lessons of this and be a little bit more careful about what pops out of your head or what pops out of your mouth. You don't have to do it all the time, but if the situation is important or the situation is fractious, take a time out. And that's what I had to present today.
That's super interesting. Did they teach that in economics?
I'm not sure.
Dunning-Kruger? It rings a bell somewhere. I don't know.
It seems like a psychology thing,
But
but it could be.
Yeah, I don't know. I just all I know. Oh, you know what? It might have been in grade 12 philosophy. Then I don't know. Maybe, who knows?
There's
Very
also
cool.
the Dunning-Kruger graph that kind of shows it visually,
Wow. There's a
which is
graph that depicts this.
yeah.
Let me Google that real quick.
Yeah, if you just Google Dunning-Kruger effect and click photos, you'll see the graph.
I'm more of a visual learner, so that always helps.
So I'm looking at it right now. I'll share my screen on Discord. You should be able to see my screen now. And if you click the live icon next to my name in the Discord chat. So confidence, competence. Okay, cool. So it's none. Then this is the arrogant side that says I'm so great. Then this is, hey, I actually know nothing, but your competence level is probably average. Then as you go increase your competence, I'm pretty good, but I know my limitations, which is confidence, I guess. Interesting.
You're going back to the comment where you're talking about sometimes I would be like you're being cocky or something.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily to put you down
Not
from
at all.
achieving something good. Most times it was in relation to preventing you from doing something harmful to yourself.
Exactly. Sorry if it
so
came off that way.
no. Yeah, I just want to make that. I just want to make that distinction for everyone listening because
Yeah.
you should be encouraging people to do things even though they may not be able to do it. Like that's like just giving some hope and like giving people the room to grow. But then sometimes when they're going to do something to harm themselves, then you have to be like telling them to be a little realistic if you want to.
Absolutely. Thanks for clarifying that because people don't know the context of our relationship. So yeah, like he coined the phrase CPOS even when I do something like substantial, and it's like, oh, you made it happen, you CPOS, or like depending on how I go about talking about it. So no, it's just funny, but very relevant. So thank you for clarifying that. Very cool. All right. Who's next? We got Soroy and Ruben.
I'm happy to go next. Yeah.
Go for it.
All right. Yeah. So, I'd like to start out with a question. Have you guys tried VR yet? Virtual reality.
I have.
You have?
I have as well.
Yeah. How about you, Andrew?
I've tried a commercial experience where you go somewhere and pay like $100 for like 45 minutes, but I haven't tried it in a personal setting yet.
So,
arcade, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What's
yeah,
that
exactly.
that spot downtown called with like the games, and then you can like get like tickets and trade them in for something?
I've only been to one of them.
Playroom?
Yeah, we went as a team last year, right? Soroy, you remember that? Were you there?
I was not part of the team when that happened, but I did hear about it.
Apologize for that, but yes, sorry, I just started at the company, but they had this very cool Star Wars one where you put on a headset, and they had this like room that you go into, and it was just like a bare bones room, but when you're in the headset, it actually feels like you're going on a mission. You've got a gun. So I knew the capabilities of VR. I had never experienced it for myself at that level. And like the vest, you would actually feel when you got shot by the AI.
Oh, it has
The
Yeah,
haptic feedback.
like it would like buzz, and it's like, oh fuck,
Yeah.
that feels
Yeah,
uncomfortable,
yeah.
you know. And like we had a friend of ours that was in the elevator at one point. I'd done it 3 times. There's like, yo, no, come with us, we want to go, we want to try it for the first time. I was like, all right, cool. So I go with this one group, and I don't want to name any names, but so you could probably guess who it is. So there's this situation where there's like a puzzle, and we're trying to do it, and this individual kept pressing the button to like fuck us up so that we couldn't get it done. So yo, stop doing that. And then like finally we're in the elevator, and you can actually, it actually feels like you're moving on the elevator, which is kind of cool because
Yeah.
there's not actually an elevator in real life. And then like he started shooting me, and I was like, yo, what are you doing? But yeah, it was kind of cool.
Cool experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what about you, Ruben? Have you tried VR?
Yeah,
What kind?
yeah. That's like kind of why I wanted to get into this. Like I said, my sister. I told you guys before. My sister got a Oculus Rift, the new headset, for Christmas, and we've been trying out some games. And I had tried it before in one of the places that Andrew talked about. Paid some good money to spend a few hours playing shooter games. I don't know. It feels awesome to hold. You're holding a controller, but once you put the headset on, it's just a completely different experience. And I wanted to talk about that. I want to talk about share a little bit of what I learned in my research, and I'll start out with the origins of VR. It was quite interesting to read about. Actually with painting and with art. Um, in the Renaissance, there was this development of perspective, and so artists would create um, these artificial worlds, and the way they painted was they depicted spaces that really didn't exist. So think of Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. That's probably the most known. There's a lot of depth in that painting, and it's still a 2D image. But the idea of these artificial worlds created some sort of interest in what would it be like if we could actually experience 2D images in a 3D world, right? A guy named Morton Hellig, he had this idea of the experience theater. He developed the Sensorama, and it was a mechanical device. And he essentially just built the first VR headset, and you would sit down and you would have an experience of driving around New York City. And this was in the 1900s. So if you can imagine someone trying to do that, getting into some sort of system where it's playing a shot of New York, you riding through a motorcycle, the seat is moving, and there's some smells. Apparently, there was like an odor fan. Really weird, but that was the first VR headset or the first VR machine. And it just took off from there. The virtual reality industry started going into medical and flight simulation and automobile industries. For the military in the 1970s and 1990s. 1991, Sega created its first VR headset. And I think this is where we get into the gaming aspect and why it's become so popular nowadays. By 2016, there was at least 230 companies developing VR-related products. That's Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Sony, and Samsung. So it's fair to say that it's going to be part of our future going forward, right? Some of you have already experienced that. We've tried Pokemon Go, which is a version of it, augmented reality. And as technology gets better, the sensors get better, and we get better headsets, we might actually be living in an experience or in a world where we won't be able to tell the difference. But how does it actually work? And I think this is interesting to share. When we look at our phone, we played Pokemon Go, and it's that similar experience. There's a little bit of depth. You get to play with your surroundings, but it's not the same thing. You're still looking at a 2D image, and there's not that depth, or not. It's not that experience where you're like feeling, oh shit, I'm gonna crash, or they're shooting at me, like you said, Dave. And what the virtual reality device does is it actually displays two different screens. And so it projects directly in front of your eyes different perspectives. We receive stimulus in our eyes from a different vantage point. And this creates that depth that I was talking about. It's known as stereopsis. When it comes to movement, if you move your head, the headset has a gyroscope similar to your phone, and so you become the camera. When you're moving in this virtual space, or in this 3D digital space, your head movement replicates the movement of the camera. So these cues that we experience in the virtual reality slowly start to become harder to distinguish from what we're actually experiencing. And I mean, in our evolution, experts say that in the 150 years that we've been humans, or Homo sapiens, our brains really haven't developed or evolved to distinguish between what's computer generated and the real world. They'll say, "Nah, Ruben, you're crazy. I can definitely tell what's different from an Xbox game or a PlayStation game, and what the real world is." But when you put the headset on, your brain starts to accept the world that it's living in, because 80% of our experience is visual. So the information that is presented to us is is so captivating that our brains are just wired to accept it as face value. So once we accept the virtual world, we experience our brain. The experience that our brain has is just, it adapts to that world. Some people have had failed. I know if you've seen these fail videos where they get scared when a spider jumps up. There's a game where you're standing on a plank, and if you have fear of heights, some people have had crazy experiences. I remember at my work, we tried this in a meeting just to see what it's like. Some people had really interesting reactions. They would like fall on the ground. Um, why does that happen, right? Because it's not like what we're seeing is actually the real world. It's still 3D generated images. It turns out that because our brain accepts what we're seeing, this technology is being used for other purposes, not just gaming. So the reason is, people have reported feeling cool when playing in cold environments, even if they're in a hot climate. So this has actually been used to reduce pain in burn victims. VR has been used for PTSD therapy, exposure therapy. If you have a phobia of leaving your house, I mentioned a phobia of spiders. It's also being used to assist elderly with their balance. So, if technology gets better, I wanted to talk about with you guys, and I'm getting to the close of my presentation. Where's this going? What will happen if 3D technology, or these digital worlds, get to the point that they actually become indistinguishable? Experts say that in 10 years, we might not have to wear a headset, and we won't be able to distinguish between computer generated graphics and the real world. What will happen to our psychology? How will we experience the world? I don't know if you've seen that movie, Ready Player One, where it's in the future and the world is in such a state that people prefer to live in a virtual reality than experience the real world. And considering what we're living through now in COVID 2020, I mean, I think we've been using it more, right? I think that's been a huge rise. And what I learned is that, according to the Grand View research, the global VR market will grow $62.1 billion in 2027.
Wow.
What I mean, I think at some point we talked about how Elon Musk wants to put chips in our brains, right? Can that be used for virtual reality? Will we
Yeah,
escape?
100%.
Will we escape our realities? What do you guys think?
like I
Just
def.
for the
Sorry,
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go.
I'll go after. I was just gonna say, just for the record, like Neuralink has already been implemented and proven.
Without
Well,
pigs though?
Yeah, on pigs.
Hmm.
Like they've changed the personality of pigs.
what?
Like,
It can change your person now. Wait, can we
yeah,
talk about what Neuralink is real quick?
Yes.
I just didn't want to go in. Yeah,
Okay, actually, yeah, that is a different topic. So can I just kind of answer Ruben's question real
Yeah, of
quick?
course. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I definitely think that VR is gonna grow. I didn't realize it's gonna grow that much, but like even with COVID, it just forces us to adapt. But even before COVID, I like Andrew, you and I thought about this. We were like, "Yo, dude, like I don't want to go to a Drake concert and stand for 6 hours because that's what's happening." Like, sorry, I sound like an old fuck, but I'd rather use my energy elsewhere. You know what I mean? I would rather, if I could have that same experience, because I only go to hang out with my friends and enjoy the atmosphere. But if I could just chill with my friends in our living room, put a headset on, and have the same experience, go to the bathroom whenever I wanted to, you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it's a different game, right? Or if I could watch a movie from home, which again, I like with a VR thing, boxing fights, you know what I mean? If I could simulate being in the crowd, right? And like still get the experience of sitting next to a stranger without being there in person, and I don't know, pay around the same price, I would probably be down because then I don't have to deal with parking. I don't have to deal with driving there and back. Like, I can go straight walk into my bed right after and not worry about work the next morning and getting enough sleep. So I do think there's an opportunity for that. And now that COVID's hit, especially now, there's going to be an opportunity for that, for sports and entertainment.
100%.
But
And that kind of model would be good for sales as well. So, because for example, before when there was a concert in Japan, we wouldn't be able to access it.
yeah,
Now they can
Hmm.
have international and global sales.
and the other thing is it's just going to expand the reach, because now you can still offer the in-house experience for anyone that wants, and the in-house experience for anyone that doesn't want to go to the actual live event. So you're just increasing the amount of potential sales you can get. So yeah, that's cool, I think.
Especially with higher ticket sales, like you can sell more first row tickets if
Hmm.
you can like multiply the amount of concert rooms or halls or however they.
Yeah, like,
well, everyone would probably have a first row, especially
Hmm.
because they're all gonna use the same camera
Hmm.
in the first row. Like
well,
everyone's gonna, that's gonna be their access point.
It's going to be egalitarian, right? Like more socialist kind of experiencing.
but how could you do that though? If it's like, let's just say I wanted to sit next to a random I guess, yeah, I guess the technology could allow for that. You know
Well,
what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It depends if you're gonna have an actual person beside you,
I want that.
or
Like,
oh,
I want to
okay,
be able to look left and see that either
right,
you or a stranger is there, and that
right,
Yeah.
same experience is different for everyone else. Just like if I was going in person.
right. I'm sure you could still do that. That
Yeah,
would be done on the software side,
yeah,
but I mean like hardware wise, like in the actual stadium, it would all be covered by like cameras, right? The first row,
Mm. Hmm.
and
you're
then
right. Yeah,
during your experience, you would implement your friends in software, so you'd see them.
So
So
I
then
don't
it
know if you
would
guys
still
have
be a
heard of.
real event.
There's VR chat right now, and you can actually. You've seen videos on YouTube, right? You jump in and you're talking to your friends. You have an avatar. You dress your avatar whatever you like it to be, based on whatever they've developed, and you talk to people, and you have that same experience where you turn left or right, and you see different people doing different things, taking a hit of that virtual bong or smoking that virtual smoke.
I haven't seen that yet, but that's pretty cool.
mm,
But that's like the work thing I was talking about too. I personally think everything's gonna be VR in the future. I think that's the way it's gonna be, especially with AI. I think
Yeah.
augmented reality is gonna be a stepping stone towards it.
Hmm.
Like Apple's working on Apple glasses, which is AR um technology, but like I think everything will be VR in the future. Uh like our entire lives will be digital. It just makes more sense. Like why would you pay $1 million for a home when you can go buy one uh outside of the city for really cheap and work from there? And just like you said, you have global reach. There's so much you can that the technology allows for that, like a lot of the weird stuff that we do in society today, I think it takes away from.
Yeah, that's true.
Hmm.
Definitely. Will
um,
that like make us closer, more separated? Yeah,
Well,
difficult.
that's exactly like asking, 100 years ago before cell phones existed, and now that cell phones exist, are we closer today or are we not? Um, you know, just like this, how social media is a little bit funny. Even though we're all connected, are we really more connected than we were before? It's gonna
Yeah,
be the
right.
same dynamic.
So there has to be like checks put in place so that we don't just accept virtual reality as the scapegoat for actual reality.
I don't know,
Tough
like
questions.
what is actual reality though, right? Like just because
Yes,
I'm in,
like last week.
you know what I mean? Like oh fuck. Okay, we're getting into that. Okay, wait. What about the Neuralink thing though? Let's talk about that
Yeah.
real quick. So, can
Watch
you
the
tell me
video.
what
It's worth.
Neuralink is?
You should watch the video. It's worth it.
I can send you
Okay.
like a 4 minute thing if you want.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's the
Isn't the basic premise? Isn't it the Elon Musk like computer chip that you put into your head?
Yep.
That's it.
On the
That's
most
pretty much
basic
it.
level.
Send me
Yeah.
that video, and I'm also gonna stream a video of VR that I thought is an amazing, like, just phenomenal video. It's only about a minute long. So, Naz, if you want to send
Dope.
that over while I'm
Yeah.
showing this, it's just not educational at all, by the way. So I'm streaming it on Discord right now.
Need a break from education.
When he tell you touch glove, you don't stop moving your body. You use your hands and your head.
Have you seen this?
Touch glove.
Oh.
Oh my god, watch that.
You wouldn't try feet or anything, right? Just the arms and the.
Shit. Excuse my friend.
Stop talking.
Hey, you know this is nothing.
It's so funny. He actually
9/11,
he thought he was actually like in the ring.
You use your hands
And
and your
so
head.
he's advancing on the guy and walks right into the TV.
Touch glove.
The laugh kills me though.
He's like square up.
Yeah.
Come here.
That is too funny. Okay, so let's see how Neuralink works. It's Neuralink. I
Hi
thought it
there,
was
my name's
Neuralink.
Peter Leywine. This is my store.
who the fuck
I've been
is
selling pens
Damn it.
and paper and ink for over 30 years
Yo,
now.
I've had that experience too.
As a small business owner, I faced a lot of challenges.
Sometimes you get genuinely scared.
Yeah.
Superhuman vision.
Andrew.
Play your favorite albums
You know,
in
I've
your
actually
head
used VR for
and
like maybe 2 hours, and once you take it off, it actually seems like reality is VR. It's a very trippy adjusting to like one to the other.
All right.
Even
It
like
was pretty scary.
we went trampoline dodgeballing back in like December of last year for a friend's birthday, and like jump in, like it's literally dodgeball on trampolines, right? And so
Yeah.
we were doing that for like an hour. Then like we get out and we're getting like dressed again to leave, and then one of my buddies was like, "Yo, just jump real quick," and I was like, "Okay." And then it was like, "Whoa!" Like your body
like,
and your
super heavy?
mind. Well, no, like when you jump, your body gets used to being
Expecting.
What's that?
You're expecting the previous experience.
Exactly, to like float a little higher and like before you hit ground. So when you hit ground earlier than you were used to, and it was like it was just crazy. It didn't wear off for like 10 minutes. It was crazy.
You just like collapse. That'd be so funny to watch.
So uncomfortable.
Watching people jumping after.
So weird. Okay, so here I got the video up. Let me stream it on Discord for the Neuralink stuff. Everyone's like, "What does this have to do with the book club?" Sorry, guys. We like to have a little bit of fun too. Okay. Otherwise, it would just be us ear fucking you. You know what I mean? Like we don't want that.
It has to do with philosophy, 100%. You were
Yeah.
talking about this, man. Yeah.
Okay, so
Where are we
no,
going?
They're just trolling. They're just trolling. It's funny. It's funny. Yeah.
have
Okay.
superhuman
Can you guys see it
vision.
on? Can you see it on Discord?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Could have superhuman vision. Play your favorite albums in your head and download your brain to a computer or even to another body.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Though this may sound like an episode of your favorite science fiction show, Elon Musk and his team at the neural tech startup Neuralink believe that their electronic brain-computer interfaces could make this possible. Described as Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires,
A Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires.
the small, easy-to-install brain-computer interface could be used to expand the capabilities of humans, changing the way we interact with technology and treat neural and mobility issues. Yet the goals of the company speaks to a potential problem in the future: artificial intelligence. Musk has been very vocal about his fear of artificial intelligence, believing AI could one day overshadow the human race. Musk's inevitable transhumanist goal of augmenting intelligence and abilities may be necessary if we are to compete with advanced artificial intelligence. However, Neuralink's team still has a long way to go before the emergence of AI-human hybrids. The tech company still has a lot of bureaucratic, ethical, and technological hurdles to cross. If Musk's companies accomplish half of what they claim, we could see the emergence of one of the most significant technologies in human history. But how does it work? Simply put, Neuralink is a technology that can help humans interact with machines using their brains. The company's eventual aim is to further develop brain-computer interfaces to the point where one can be installed in a doctor's office. Let's say you opted in to go in for a Neuralink procedure. What would that look like? Neuralink wants to make the installation of your brain-computer interface painless and quick, as easy as LASIK surgery. The design has changed significantly and now resembles a small coin around 8 millimeters in diameter, which houses electrodes that are about 1/20th the thickness of a strand of hair. To install the Neuralink, a tiny piece of skull is removed and the Neuralink is slotted in to sit flush with the skull. Since this process needs to be extremely precise, the Neuralink team has created a robot specifically for this procedure. The entire process could take less than an hour while you are under partial anesthesia. Installing the device will only leave a tiny scar and include all the sensors one would expect in a smartwatch. Once installed, the device will be able to send and receive electrical signals through your brain and use these to control machines. In its early stages, it could allow control of basic devices like a computer and other smart devices. But how? Your brain sends information to different parts of your body using neurons. Neurons in your brain connect with each other to form a network and communicate using chemical signals called neurotransmitters. This reaction generates an electric field. By placing electrodes nearby, you can record these reactions. The electrodes translate these signals into an algorithm that a computer can read. Down the road, Elon Musk claims that the device could be used to operate robots, cure paralysis, treat mental illness, to stream music directly into the wearer's brain, and extend the range of hearing beyond normal frequencies. Just like Neo in the Matrix, you would be able to download skills into your brain. You could even possibly summon your Tesla telepathically. In 2020, Neuralink demonstrated the device installation in a pig. The wildly anticipated demo showed that a living animal can function normally after having one implanted and then removed. Musk has announced that Neuralink received breakthrough device designation from the FDA in July 2020. This is a major step towards eventually mass-producing Neuralink devices. Who knows? Maybe Neuralink will allow us to achieve a symbiosis with artificial intelligence. Would you get a Neuralink implant?
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Would you
The
guys
cool
do it?
part is, I would, yeah, 100%.
Yup.
I would once it's proven to be safe without any side
Yes.
effects. Like once, like I wouldn't be the first round trial. I'd be like, yeah, you guys do that. Then maybe like in 40, 50 years when I'm like 100, I'll do it and give me like a bionic body. You know, I'd be down for that.
But you take the vaccine though, right?
Not immediately. No, I'd do the same thing. I'd just wait. You know.
Yeah.
Just
And
wait.
then, yeah, I would
Yo,
wait it out.
But then Facebook is gonna be listening to all your thoughts and giving you ads and shit.
Yeah, but they're already doing that
100%.
now.
No, I know, but then like you'll be in a forest and they're still gonna be listening to your thoughts. You know what I mean?
You let
That's
them
never
listen.
gonna change.
I'm not crazy. You know what I mean? I'm not got nothing to hide. Like, sure, like
No, I know, but like, haven't you ever had the situation where like you want like a day or a weekend to go somewhere where you turn off your phone and then you don't have to like be a part of this world? You can be part of like the natural world.
100%.
Well, I'm sure you
They
could like
probably have an
airplane
off
mode it.
switch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they could
hopefully
probably
it has
airplane.
that.
And again, they can still probably gather the information, but they probably can't throw ads at you. I think that would just be fucked if they can throw ads at you
That'd be
whenever they
hilarious. You're
wanted
walking
to.
down the street,
Yeah, and an
taking a
ad
piss.
hits you. I think if it's like, oh, you're accessing a certain application, then there's gonna be you're subject to ads. But there's got to be like an airplane mode where it's like, okay, I'm not looking at anything using my Neuralink. I'm using my natural stuff. I actually, you know what? If I'm a bionic body, then who knows? Then maybe. I don't know. Here's an upgrade that you can get for your arm. Yeah, I don't know. Like, who knows? It's interesting.
But the cool thing is, like, they say it can cure like depression, anxiety, like a lot of the mental illnesses. Elon Musk claims it can solve, which is pretty cool. And a lot of like physical problems with your body too. Like you said, like if your spine's severed, like
Yeah,
your mind still controls that, not controls, but it still processes how to move that body part. It's just that the signal doesn't go to
exactly.
that
Something's
body part.
blocking it. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you have like a receptor on the body part and then you have the neural link in your brain, like you can wirelessly control your freaking leg or something like that. Or it'd be wires too. I imagine they run through your spine or body, something like that. Or it could be wireless and like the signals can instead of traveling through your spine, theoretically it could travel wirelessly through the neural link to the part that you have installed in your leg, and then that part will stimulate whatever it needs to move the leg, which is pretty fucking cool.
I don't know how it could
Theoretically.
cure. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying theoretically. What
Oh,
were you saying?
I don't know how it can cure anxiety and depression unless it's a certain type of those of anxiety and depression, like aka anxiety or depression from a traumatic incident that leaves you with paralysis. That I can understand. But
So it releases. It would just tell your brain to release certain type of endorphins
oh,
or
I
So
hormones.
see.
so the Neuralink is I believe it's both a like read and write like
Wow,
process. So it doesn't just like read what's going on in your brain, but it can
that's
like
cool.
program it too. Yeah.
Oh, so it treats your brain as a machine. It's like, yo, create
Mm.
these hormones,
Exactly. Exactly.
eliminate the release of those hormones.
Yep.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And
Wow.
yeah, they did have a live demo 3 months ago. It was like an hour long. If you guys want to watch it later or whatever, but he that's where he brings out the pigs and he explains like that pig had like a certain personality, not disorder, but just like whatever. And then he changed it with Neuralink and stuff like that, and they're all happy and like they're fine and stuff like that.
Now,
It's
but
pretty
now
cool.
therein lies a concern because then they can control us
Yep.
as masses, right?
Yep. That's all. That's the only thing I'd be afraid of.
Not even control, but like change your personality fundamentally.
Yeah, that's kind of
Scary.
crazy.
And you probably wouldn't even know it. They could do it so subtly that
Yeah,
you would never know.
yeah,
But that
or
being said, the media does that already, probably.
Exactly.
Like,
indirectly, but yes, this would be like directly.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, literally, if a company owns this or the government owns this, they own whoever has it.
And that's all technology is, right? It just keeps getting more evasive. The same issues still apply. It's just it's more of a evasive uh implementation, I guess. Just like cell phones and like everything like collecting data and stuff like that. The more technology advances, the more it's going to be good at doing whatever other people want it to do, which is like collecting data or whatever it is.
Mm,
and I don't think we're going to be able to stop technology. We'll just have to deal with the consequences.
yeah.
And I don't think government will ever stay on top of technology to regulate it properly too. Make sure we're safe.
Yeah, because if they did, like, then people would like use like if they would just shut down all like a technology, like if they just said no virtual reality or neural link, but there were some
Hmm.
benefits, people would just do it in the black market, right? And then
Or other
get the
countries
benefits
would
that way.
and have advantage.
Yeah, so I feel like it's like one of those things where once it's out of the box, like you can't really.
Hmm.
Wow. Anything else on
Like
this
that.
before? Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, because I was going to talk about like the virtual reality concepts. Like, what are the concerns of if we start like, let's say we spend like 4 or 5 hours a day on our phones right now. What happens if that goes 5 hours onto virtual reality, and then you're kind of spending more time in virtual reality, or like when you're awake, than not, right? And then like, what are the like effects that will have on like society, on like the personal, like chemistry, brain, and things like that? But like we won't know until we do it, right? And then we just
Until we
have to
get
deal
there.
with, Yeah, and then we just have to deal with it as it comes.
So a great way that I like to compare is just like with existing technologies. And it's like, 20 years ago before like I guess I had a computer compared to now is like I spend every waking minute on my computer. And like I'm sure that has like a huge effect on my brain and just like how I think and perceive stuff, especially just not like using a computer, but like the things you do on the computer also, like the information you're taking in. I think it's gonna just be the same thing with. Obviously, there's gonna be more issues, but I think it's the same thing with Neuralink, where like uh, you're just gonna get used to like the way of life, I guess, with VR
It's
and
gonna be
everything.
the way of life. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because if they can like advertise benefits, like people will take those risks if the benefits are worthwhile in their opinion.
yeah. And just for the record, like in terms of ads, like your computer inherently isn't built in with ads. It's the platforms you use on your computer that like
Yeah,
make the ads, you know, prevalent.
it's true.
But like Elon Musk, he used to complain about it a lot. Like the information bandwidth for a human is really freaking low. Like a computer is like gigabytes per second. Humans, I don't even think it's megabytes per second. And example of that is reading a book. Like with Neuralink, you would be able to download information gigabytes per second. Whereas with reading a book, I think it's like actually kilobytes per second.
Oh
Because
my
the
God.
amount of text you can actually read within suppose like 5 minutes is actually kilobytes.
You're
That
saying
amount of
reading
text.
is time to get neuro.
Exactly, yeah. So like I don't want to say reading is inefficient, because he says that in terms of comparing it to computer, but like actually compared to computer, just sitting there reading something is like a very inefficient way of taking information. Whereas like you said, with freaking like Neuralink, you could like learn how to computer program, say like Python, within like maybe a couple hours. Um, you're not only like doing stuff, you're doing stuff in Python too, not only just reading, but like a novel you should be able to ingest in like maybe an hour or two with Neuralink if it's gigabytes per second. Because
But
a
then
whole
how would the
book,
learning place? Because if I download like 200 books, how would that learning kind of go through, like, kind
how do you
of,
process it, right?
I don't know if
Like
you
yeah.
process it. It's just
process.
like Googling it though. Like if someone asks me a question or needs to know something, it just makes it so much easier to just Google it because I have it in my quote unquote database in my head. It's almost like weird.
Ye-
It's like, oh, I didn't know that, but it's in there, and you just say it.
Yeah, I don't
I
know
don't.
how
Yeah, we
that's
don't
gonna
know.
work.
Yeah.
It's just that yeah, you guys are right. It's like I can go like pull up a book on my computer and I can see all and I can read. I don't know. You're right, because you're always processing real time. If everything was just thrown at you, would you just like understand it all together, or would it take time to process that too? I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure. With the Neuralink, the way that we memorize things will change, as you guys were saying. Because, for example, back in the day when my dad performed business, he had to memorize certain stats and figures
Yep.
that were on a list at his office. And when he's on the road, he doesn't have access to this list. So he has to memorize it. But for me, I use Salesforce. I don't have to memorize any of those things. I just like read them and I don't even try to commit them to memory.
And then the super cool thing is when you probably throw AI into all this stuff too, and you can like again, augment the way you think. You can multiply, you can supercharge the way you think through AI,
Yeah.
possibly. I don't know. That's just me
Like
guessing,
that's
but
just crazy. Like if
yeah, it's
there's
super cool.
like aliens, they are they naturally just more advanced than us, or do they have something like this? Like I don't know. I have no idea. I'm just throwing shit out there.
Yeah.
What was your question again?
Like if there's aliens out there that are more advanced than us from a technology perspective, are they naturally just smarter than us to create the technology, or do they have this enabling them to do it?
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like I don't know. I just,
Right,
no one
right,
has
right,
the
right.
answer to that.
So, in the context of virtual reality, one of the things I researched was, right now, what's happening is Epic Games developed a system that helps with the generation of computer graphics. Um, it would take so long for you to build a tiny little city for a video game, because you're constantly replicating buildings and trees mountains or whatever, right? But if you don't have to design that, and the system automatically designs that for you, it helps you, we're gonna reach better graphics much faster. um, I mean, if aliens were were to create technology like that, I think, yeah, of course, right? They're helping. They're creating robots to help them create better versions of themselves or better robots. Kind of like that type of question.
Apparently, like for music, one of the viewers is saying that Chef, shout out to Chef Joy, he's saying that putting melodies in and stuff in your head into actual melodic progressions that are translatable into digital audio workshops, and there's products already being made for that. Like he's like, I got sent a microphone that takes vocal input and turns them into MIDI progressions. Now this stuff's out of my wheelhouse, so I don't really understand it.
MIDI progressions.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is that?
I don't know what that is. I'm gonna Google it. 1 second.
Oh, MIDI.
MIDI, I guess it's pronounced
MIDI?
MIDI.
That shows how much I know about it. What is that?
I think it's like notes. Because I remember like a couple years ago, I saw like there's a program that they're developing which uses like artificial intelligence to like create like images. So like you would just do like you would just put like it's like very simple how you control it. So like you would just use the color blue and then draw a line like at the top, and then the AI would be like, oh, he wants to like draw a sky, and then it would auto
Yeah,
generate like a
I've
blue
seen that, yeah.
sky and things like
okay.
that.
Yeah. That's pretty much the same technology or similar technology to the VR thing I was talking about. The
Yeah.
MIDI files are more valuable than samples and will constitute credits. So these files essentially just you play it a note, and then it'll create a melody or a chord progression if you select that specific file or that specific note. So you can create melodies by telling the program, this is kind of what I want to create. Instead of saying blue, me, and then it creates music for you. I'm guessing that's what it could be.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
so
I think.
it's
Sorry, go ahead.
musical instrument digital interface. That's what MIDI stands for. It's a
Mm.
standard protocol for interconnecting computers with musical instruments, stage lighting, and other time-oriented media. What the fuck?
What's the application?
That's above my head, yeah.
No, so it it connects like, you know, lights or instruments or mics or whatever to a computer, translates the stuff that's being generated by the aforementioned device into a computer, so you can, I guess, put it together and create like a melody, you know what I mean, or alter it or something like that. That's my understanding of it.
Is it like those like I don't know if those like touchpads, all those buttons, and then like each button kind of represents a
Yeah,
sound that you program?
That's what I'm understanding. And like you connect a guitar to it, play a note, and then that thing takes that note and I don't know, you can do stuff to it. It's like notes you can use in programs to make melodies. And he's like, yeah, AI is already mad used in music production already, but there's talks about implants or neural links to streamline the progression better. He's like, I can join call to explain MIDIs. Realize I introduced a topic that y'all aren't familiar with. I don't want to encroach on your stuff though. Well, that's fine. Soroy still needs to say his part though, so if you want to come in for a couple quick seconds to talk about that, you're welcome to. Kobus also mentioned that the Neuralink would also fuck up the school system, because if you could Google anything mentally, if you had it, it would kind of make tests pointless.
Which is great.
Again, it's all how you use technology, right? Like you can still cheat in school right now, but
it would also make any child who doesn't have this at a disadvantage in education. That's true too. Like
that's exactly why I would take it. It's like the difference between people that are using Neuralink and art is going to be a huge disadvantage.
Yeah, because it's not going to be free to everyone, right? I don't think that's how it's going to be available. Probably have to pay for it. I think Chef's here now. What's up, Chef? Can you hear us? We can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I
There
stepped
you are.
away.
That's okay. That's okay.
It's hard to barge into your conversation like that.
And that's okay. Chef is I met him through Smash Bros on Instagram, but he is also and more prevalent in the music industry. He creates his own beats and raps and stuff too. He's
Nice.
Oh,
very
dope.
talented.
Nice to meet you, man.
Yeah, nice to meet you. So basically, I mean, you kind of hit it spot on. MIDIs are basically just anything that translates physical things, so like or physical or like real life things. So in my case, it'd be music. So let's say I'm playing a piano, and I wanted to play like Bach or something like that, and I can play it on the piano, but I want to make like create a song with it. So how I would do that is I would change the piano notes I'm playing into a MIDI file or a MIDI progression so that my computer can access the same notes.
And then what do you do with those notes? Like, what's the purpose of it?
So what I do with those notes, so like what I do in music production is I will play a melody, whether it's like a chord progression or like whatever sounds that I want, and then I layer them onto my digital audio workshop DAW, and I can either loop that or I can like change what sound it makes. So I can do like a piano if I wanted to. If I could also change it to like a violin and stuff like that. But how that all kind of links to what you guys are talking about Neuralink is that um I forgot where I read this. Elon Musk is already, or a couple of people already reached out to him. They produced a product called Doubler, and it's basically, I have it, I'm holding it right now actually. It's a microphone, and you can like sing whatever, because like a huge part of music is translating the ideas and melodies and stuff into your head onto a digital interface. Because like
Okay.
a lot of people aren't good at like I can't just like play something on the piano and be like, oh, this sounds like dope. It's like a matter of like
Well,
clicking different notes and figuring it out.
I think everyone's experienced that before, where it's like you have a tune or like a song stuck in your head, but you can't find that song because it's like hard to
Yeah,
like Google that, right? But
yeah.
like
Or
you
in
said,
this in a similar sense, like doing any sort of putting the ideas and creativity onto like a physical or digital entity is like really hard to do because that you're taking something that's abstract and isn't like a solid like actual idea that can be laid out in front of you into something that doesn't really translate well. So like the microphone that I have now, I can like sing into it. So like let's say I'm coming up with a melody, it's like da 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 da. I can sing that into my microphone and that'll translate the idea in my head into my digital audio
Into actual
workspace.
notes.
Yeah,
Into,
and
Wow.
that's a combination of just like a really good AI system that's incorporated into the software of the microphone, as well as like a whole bunch of other things like autotune's part of it because of like pitch detection. But
mm.
um, I was talking to one developer and they're coming up with like a helmet that you can attach to your computer. And there's still obviously it's like super like prototype, like alpha phase or pre-alpha of like being able to think of like different notes and how that shows up in terms of like brain signals of like, okay, if I'm thinking of an A, it's gonna fire this, like like fire in this certain pattern. If I'm thinking of like the note C, it's gonna fire in this pattern. Um,
Oh wow,
yeah,
that's
so
kind of like
there,
that movie Amadeus. He's like thinking, and you can hear in the movie like the
yeah,
notes he's playing. Oh, that's so
yeah.
cool.
So they're already working on that, and that's kind of what like when you guys were talking, or when because I just joined not too long ago, and you guys were talking about Neuralink, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was just talking to like someone about that and how like AI and just like being able to translate brain signals into like actual things ends up coming like it's such a crazy concept to me that like we're already moving towards that and that we're already thinking about doing stuff like that. And it's just I don't know, it's kind of crazy to think about.
We were actually a targeted ad based on your conversation because we were listening to you. I'm just joking. I'm totally kidding. There's no
Yeah,
there's no connection.
don't go too meta on me. Don't go too meta on me.
That's very cool. Wow. That's insane.
So then what was
Good.
I was gonna be like, so what becomes the differentiator? Because like right now it's like you can play an instrument really well, right? That could be a differentiator. But if you can kind of use AI to like replicate the thoughts, like the musical thoughts, then you don't need to learn how to play the instrument if the AI can cover that for you. And then, so I'm thinking,
Exactly.
like, does the differentiator become like who is the most creative? Like,
Yeah,
that's what I'm
I
trying
would.
to think. Or like,
Well,
do we just listen to AI music from now
a
on?
huge differentiator is like when you listen, like I'll give an example. Like when you listen to EDM, it's very, I don't want to say flat, but like there's certain automations and different ways. Like maybe I want to put a filter on and make it go wah wah wah. Like that's fine and all, but there's certain human sorry, I broke up for a second. There's a certain human tone and quality to when people play, like I'm sure you've heard, like when you listen to an MP3 or listen to Spotify as opposed to seeing that artist live. And that kind of transcends all genres, but is like super prevalent in like jazz or like a lot of more abstract music where when you hear it live, um there's like a certain like velocity that the people played in, there's a certain tonality to the music that people make and are playing live that's way different than like just
Mhm.
clicking notes onto a program, just
So,
being like,
question
okay,
then:
this is a C, this is a B, whatever.
do you think technology will ever be able to like do those factors better than an actual human,
I don't
even
think
though
so.
it's like a live concert? Okay.
I don't think so.
Depends.
I think the optimal thing that's going to come up is using them in conjunction, because like
Yep.
AI is super helpful for streamlining process, and having those ideas quickly like translated into a digital interface is really helpful, but you can't take away like a lot of the human tonality and performance of making your own things, because that's I love video game music, but that's pretty much just video game music where everything is just like beep beep boop bop bop bop, beep beep,
Right.
right? And that doesn't have the same thing as if like, you know, you listen to like a jazz or like a live band cover of like video game music that has a whole different feel to it. So I mean,
Organic, right? Yeah.
yeah, it's very
Well,
organic. It's very, you can feel a lot of like the tension, and like let's say there's like a riser or like dissonance, you can feel that in how people are playing and how all the sounds come together in a live performance, and that's not exactly captured as well when you're just laying down notes. You can of course like automate different effects and like mess around with different things to get a similar sort of tension, but it is a little bit, it comes off a little different.
well, also brand is the biggest thing too, right? Like an AI compared to like, I don't know, like to go see Drake. Like Drake's a brand. You want to go see Drake
Yeah.
perform. Like you don't want to just you don't care about a computer. You care about the actual person.
I mean, but Drake also uses a lot of AI in the processing, because like a lot of AI programs are pretty studio standard at this point. Obviously, like when you have a lot of money and you are a brand as big as Drake, you have more access to like really nice synthesizers and really nice like
Also, I was
sounds.
gonna ask that too.
But
What's the difference between like synthesizers and like the MIDI you were talking about?
so a synthesizer can be thought of as an instrument. So
Right.
that's whether it's like a bass or like a keyboard or anything, you could change a synthesizer. Basically, all, I'm gonna get real physicsy on you. Every sound is some sort of combination of like sine waves, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Sine waves or square waves or anything like that. So like no matter what note I'm doing, and even me just talking right now, it's just a whole bunch of like waves,
Mm-hmm.
like sound waves. So a synthesizer is basically anything that uses those waves and creates a certain sound. A MIDI, in terms of music, would be the actual notes that are playing. So like this can be just like me talking can be thought of as a synthesizer, but the things that I'm saying and the way that I'm saying it and the different notes that I'm
I
hitting and
see.
just going like that can be thought of as the MIDI or the
Okay.
sine waves. So they're, yeah, they're a little bit different. One's the instrument and one's the actual things that are being like said or like recorded by that instrument.
Synthesizer.
It's like the
Crazy.
subparts, right? Is that right?
The subparts?
Yeah, like where you said like the synthesizer is like the machine or like the instrument. And you said MIDI is like the notes. When you say synthesizer is like the instrument, do you mean like the sound of the instrument or just the
Yeah.
actual instrument?
So like thinking about music, we can think of it as like a speaker giving a TED talk. The speaker's voice can be thought of as a synthesizer,
Right.
like the tonal quality and stuff like that. But the actual words he's saying and the speech that he's giving, the lecture, and the
Oh,
words that he's actually saying and how he's saying
afterwards.
it can be thought of as the MIDI.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry if I didn't explain that well the first time.
No,
No, it's just
MIDIs are now understood, I think, better than we did before.
Yeah,
MIDIs are
sure.
like the words, synthesizers like the voice.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
It just that it reminds me so much about string theory when we were talking about last week, because
Why?
like in string theory, it's like the way they try to like understand it is by like try to go into like the smallest parts of the universe. So it's like uh like like when you break up an atom and you have its like electrons and protons and stuff like that, and you break that up, and then like eventually they get to like the quarks, and like that's what, and then the quarks, the thing smaller than the quarks is like they think is what is string theory, which is like a string of vibration of energy, and like that creates a quark, and then that creates like the electrons and protons and stuff like that, and that creates like atoms and just like the bigger like a- smaller elements and then bigger elements. Um, it to me it just sounds like the same thing. It's just like
Yeah, it is around the same concept.
the sub parts of
Mhm.
it.
It's like for like when I started making music, you start thinking about, and I think this applies to like any form of life where you start getting really invested in something and you start taking it apart. Like when I make music and when I listen to music now, I'm not listening entirely to like the whole of the concept. I'm like picking out different pieces of it. So I'm like, okay, there's keys here. This is how the drums sound. This is probably what they put on the drums. And then like you can think even further. It's like this is how the drum wave form is. So like the kick is like it has a high amplitude in terms of its sine wave and it's really close together. So it has a nice thumpy sound, or it's a little more drawn out. So it's a little softer. So I mean, like what you're saying totally resonates with me, where it's just like you can break everything down, and that's honestly probably the best way to like understand concepts like these, especially because it's a little abstract for a lot of people that aren't invested or like highly integrated in that community.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Like holy shit. We went from
Sorry, that's a
VR to
lot of
Neuralink
information.
No, it's
to
cool.
MIDIs. No, that's cool. That's the beauty of the conversation. It's natural rather than just again ear fucking everyone, right? So I'd prefer. I think you guys tell me. I'd kind of prefer it when it's a natural
love it.
conversation like that, right? We went off on talking about like Naz said string theory for like a good 40 minutes last week, and that wasn't even part of what we were going to talk about. So that was cool. But Chef, yo, thanks for stopping by. You can still hang out. You can contribute wherever you please. It's an open forum. But Soroy,
Sure,
sorry,
I'll
man.
hang out for a little bit.
Sure, yeah. And so if you guys want to check out Chef, I'll shout him out right now.
Shameless
That's his.
plug.
Smash. I'm gonna watch you guys play Smash next
That's
time.
his. What the?
Who's better player?
Chef Sparrow.
I think I'm better. I haven't played in a minute
Me
though
neither.
because internet's kind of sus where I'm at, and I was getting frustrated. So I've just been focusing a lot on music.
Yeah, I've just been focusing on Dota. So.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Also, the Smash community is kind of toxic. So
Yeah. So what's your Instagram again? Chef Joy, what you cooking?
Chef Joy, what you cooking?
So ChefJoyWatcha.
Watcha cooking.
And then cooking, COOKIN. That's what it is. Soroy, do you want to take the mic? It's your turn to present. What was it? Lean Startup, right? Is he here? Did he leave?
Yep.
Still
There
here.
he is. Go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Let me just get it out. Okay. Cool. So the book I'm
And
talking
then,
about
sorry,
is.
mic a little bit louder. Just.
Oh.
You know.
Let me see if I can put it closer.
Yeah.
Okay, better?
Yeah, better. Thank you.
Cool. So the book I'm reading is Lean Startup. It's by Eric Rice. I think I'm pronouncing that right. He was one of the founders of IMVU, which, if you remember, is like that, like, I believe it's like a chat avatar thing, like instant messaging. Was around like 10 years ago. But he talks about this concept called like lean startup, and it's something similar that what like Toyota uses in their kind of managerial practice. But let me just go through it and describe it. So how he describes is lean startup is a form of entrepreneurship, and it gives startups a better framework to operate. And he says that um, it's a form of management that differentiates from traditional corporate management because a startup is very different than a traditional business that is like operating, and therefore you need a different set of practices to manage that. So there's the 5 principles of the lean startup is number one, entrepreneurs are everywhere. It's not just in like the garages, like you're going to be an entrepreneur in any kind of company, size, sector, or industry, because his definition of an entrepreneur is anyone who works within a startup. And his definition of a startup is a human institution designed to create new products or services under the conditions of extreme uncertainty. So the extreme uncertainty is kind of critical there because that's what defines a startup. It's the uncertainty because you don't know if the product will succeed because usually you're creating something new that hasn't been performed. So like if you wanted to open up a coffee shop, it wouldn't necessarily be a startup because you already have other coffee shops to like base your company off of. So then number 2 principle is entrepreneurship is management because as he mentioned, a startup is an institution and the management style must be tailored to startups. And then principle 3 is validated learning. So startups exist not to make stuff, money, or to even to serve its customers. The reason startups exist is to learn how to build a sustainable business. And this learning can be validated through frequent experiments. And then principle 4, and I'll touch a bit about it a little bit later because it's one of the core ideas, is the build, measure, learn feedback loop. So this is like fundamental. And it's the process of turning ideas into products, and then you want to measure the customer's response, and then you want to learn whether you want to pivot or persevere. And then the last principle is innovation accounting. So it's how do you measure progress accurately in a startup? So this is so you have to use new metrics and milestones because if you're using the traditional metrics that regular companies use, you can kind of be like diluted. And then one of the concepts that I liked during the book was they kind of differentiate between like how a rocket ship works and how a car works. So with a rocket ship, like everything must be like planned beforehand. Like everything has to be like very accurately calculated, like planned, measured, and built. And then you have to perfectly launch it. Otherwise, like you can end up like millions or thousands of like miles or kilometers off your destination. And this is very different to a car because a car has a steering wheel. Because like when you drive, you don't like if I tell you like how do you get to work, right? You know how to get to work, but if I told you to write down every turn and like every single move, you wouldn't know, right? Because you adjust. Like let's say you're driving and like your lane is busy, you can change lanes, right? You can make those tiny adjustments because of the steering wheel. So like the idea is like when you're driving, you make tons of like tiny adjustments as you try to head towards your destination. And then he talks about you don't want to launch a startup, you want to steer the startup. So this kind of talks about like that kind of comes down to like the build, measure, learn feedback loop. So he says for startups, it's essential that ideas transform into products, and then the customer has to interact with them and the product, and then it'll provide feedback, which is both quantitative and qualitative. So these are really experiments, and the information generated is more valuable than the money, awards, or the press mentions that they will receive because this information can influence the next set of ideas, which like creates the feedback loop. So then it's like, how do you start this? So the feedback loop is you want to take your idea and then you build it into the product or service, but like moving forward, I'll just say product, and it could be either. And then once you build the product, you want to measure the data, and then using that data, you want to learn. And then based off whatever you learned from that like experiment, you'll create new ideas, which you'll have to build out and then test again. And so he says most people have professional training on one of these areas. Like an engineer is very good at building things very efficiently, and a manager is good at like strategy and learning, and an entrepreneur is good at having like the best product. But the key thing is that you need all of them. You can't focus on one area of the feedback loop. You have to focus on all of it, because the main thing with the feedback loop is that you want to minimize the time that it takes to go through the entire cycle. So you don't have to like you don't want to spend too much time building a product, because it'll take too much time to go through the whole feedback loop. So the first step is determining your business model hypothesis. So there are things called like leap of faith assumptions. So these are like the riskiest hypotheses that you have, and like everything, like the whole business kind of depends on it. So let's say like you have a business idea, like you have there's like some sort of hypothesis that like everything kind of like hinges upon. Like, so there's two types of hypotheses. So they are the value hypotheses and the growth hypotheses. Um, and like these are the two variables that you kind of have to like tune and like tweak as you like progress to kind of like build the engine of growth for your startup. So each iteration or experiment should test one of these two, either the value hypothesis or the growth hypothesis, and then work to improve them. So what are they? So a value hypothesis tests like your product or service actually provides value to your customer. Because if you build a really good product, but then you find out like customers don't find value in it, then you just wasted all your time. And then the growth hypothesis, it tests how your new customers will discover the product and service. So you could have like an organic, like viral growth where like customers are sharing it, they're telling their friends about it. So these are the hypotheses that you have to test. And then he says you want to test this leap of assumption first. So it was like an example is like they had two, like the business had two, I can't remember if it was Facebook or they used some kind of like social media example. And they're saying like the first hypothesis is that people will find value in it and like will be using it and they can grab the customer's attention. And then the second hypothesis is once we have the customer's attention, we can sell that to advertisers. And then they're like, well, technically the second hypothesis isn't as risky, because like there is like market evidence that like in the past like advertisers will pay for target audience attention. So then the main hypothesis that you must test is, can you get customers' attention? Like that would be the leap of faith assumption that everything else is based off of. So how do you test out your riskiest leap of faith assumption? You do this with an minimal viable product, which is also known as an MVP. So the MVP is the product that enables a full turn of the build, measure, learn loop, and it has to be with a minimum amount of effort and the least amount of development time. So MVP might include a little bit extra work because you have to add features to kind of measure the results. But the whole point is that you want to make sure that what you want to be building is actually something useful, and you're not wasting time creating it and then finding out after that, oh, the customer doesn't actually care. So one of the examples in the book was like talking about features. So like a lot of the time like a team will come up with a bunch of features that like they want to add to their product, and then they spend a bunch of time creating these features and then they release it to the customers. But this is kind of a little bit backward because you don't even know if the customers value that feature. You're assuming that they value it. So an MVP kind of gives them a very like scrappy first draft, and then the customer will tell you what features they want, and then you can build it instead of going the other way. So how it kind of works is like you have the like build, measure, learn loop, but it actually starts backwards. So first you start with the learning. So it's like, what assumption are you trying to learn? And then how can we measure it? And then you build something to measure it. Like you build the product for that measurement. So you kind of work backwards. And then it talks about like innovation accounting, so like how you actually like measure your progress. So they talk about this idea of like a cohort analysis versus like regular gross numbers. Um, and the idea is like if you're just looking at like gross numbers, like for example, if you're just looking at like how many customers have signed up, this can be like a vanity metric, he calls it, because like it makes you feel good because you see progress, but it's not really giving you an accurate picture of the situation. So what a cohort analysis is like you look at like a group of customers like every day, like you look at how the customer's behavior change. So it'll be like you take like one group of customers and then you'd be like how many people like registered, how many people like signed in, how many people like repeatedly used your product, and then like the next day you start over and then you see like how did the customers like or like let's say like you do next month how are customers reacting now, but you're looking at brand new customers again, so it's a more accurate like picture of the progress you're making, because if you just look at gross numbers, those numbers will almost always go up because of like over time you'll gain more customers, but it doesn't give you the full picture. So then he talks about you need actionable metrics, which require the 3 A's, which is they have to be actionable, which means they must demonstrate clear cause and effect. So like a lot of times a company will like see progress and they'll just assume it's based off the changes they make. You have to actually be able to like clearly state like, is this why? And a lot of the times you just have to ask the customer. The second A you need is it has to be accessible. So first, it has to be available to everyone in the company. So it's not just like higher level managers. Like each department has to kind of understand what your like metrics are, and it has to be understandable by everyone. So you don't want to have like a very complex metric that only like your analysis team understands. Like the whole company has to know, like the engineers have to understand it as well as the marketing team, so we can kind of work together on these metrics. And then the last one, it has to be to be aud auditable. So like you have to be able to audit it. And then you just have to be able to test the data. Because if you can't actually audit if the metrics are like working, then there's no real point. And he said a lot of the times that comes down to just asking the customer. Like you have to just like survey the customers, or you have to experiment with the customers, because sometimes the customer doesn't even know what they want. So you just have to see how they actually behave in the real world. And that's most of what I had. There's like other stories that I really liked about the book. Because it talks about like the minimal viable product, and just like getting it out there as soon as possible. Because I think like a lot of like I know for me like you have all these ideas, but then you never execute any of them because you can kind of get into like the over analysis and you never actually find out um, if any of your ideas actually make sense. So like unless you actually start doing it and testing it and getting customer feedback, you won't know if you're on the right path. So I thought that was really interesting. And it talks about how like you want to make sure that you're not wasting time on things that the customer doesn't care about, and you don't want to be making the assumptions of how the customer will behave. So you have to actually go out there and test it, because he says like a lot of startups will fail because they spend way too much time on features that the customer doesn't care about. Like the story they talk about was, so IMBU is like it was pretty much a chat platform. So originally they wanted to integrate with other like instant messaging platforms because they thought customers wouldn't like the friction of downloading a new like software. They wanted to integrate with all these other ones, right? But then when they actually like asked customers to use it, the concept of trying to get these instant messenger add-ons was too complicated for them, and they actually had no qualms about actually just downloading a new one. So how they thought the customer would behave was vastly different than how they actually behaved. They also thought that like the key growth of their platform was based off of if they would invite their friends to the new platform. But actually, when they started like releasing features, they released this one feature called like it's like a chat now button, and like when you click it, you just chat with a random other person who also clicked it. And that was one of their most liked features. So they found out that people like these because their target demographic was like teenagers. Teenagers didn't want to talk to their friends. They wanted to make new friends with the platform. So then they had to like kind of pivot their strategy based off of that. But they never would have known that unless they released like a very MVP product. Like another one of the features is like in the beginning, their avatars, like the 3D avatars, they couldn't move because they couldn't move around the universe. They kind of just stayed in place. And then the customer said like they wanted their avatars to move around. So then they started working on implementing this. But because they couldn't actually because at the time the industry standard was like the Sims, like the EA Sims, and like the complex like walking animations had to look smooth. Like you want to make sure your avatar isn't bumping into any of the objects in the world or like going through objects, which is like a very um like development heavy process. So what they did is they, instead of doing like the walking animation, spending a lot of time on like the physics of the game engine, they just use the teleport function. So wherever you clicked, you just teleport there. And then when they released it, they didn't have very high hopes, but then the customer feedback was really good because they actually preferred the teleportation towards the walking because it saved them time, right? So they actually liked the teleportation, and the management actually thought like this was going to be a weak feature, and it turned out to be one of the fan favorites. So it just like goes to show you that like you should never assume how the customer will use and like your product. You just have to release the product and then make the changes as you go. And then it talks about like how it's very counterintuitive because like a lot of um, like entrepreneurs, they don't want to release like a bad product. Like they want to release the perfect product. But he says like you have to get over this fear and just like be okay with putting out a bad product and then making the progress because it'll be you're more likely to like have that success because there's like one of the things he talks about was like for startups, it's actually easier to raise money if you have zero revenue than if you have like a low amount of revenue, because if you have zero revenue, you like your imagination can like imagine like a overnight success. But he says like this is actually counterintuitive and can be very harmful. um so it's just something to watch out for. So like be okay with like starting very small, with not a perfect polished product, and make changes and like slowly like get better every time you make these changes. And that's kind of all I had for this week.
It's really cool. There's, again, a lot of overlapping topics and different things that we've been talking about in the previous weeks, like the overnight success thing, making sure that you have, you're creating a business for the right reasons, caring about your audience and caring about your customers and stuff like that. So it's good. Who's that book by? Lean Startup.
It's Eric Ries. It's
Okay,
Ries.
Okay, I'll probably check it
Really
out.
sure you pronounce it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was really good. Like, cause like if you want to like start a business, the whole idea is just go start it
Yeah.
as quickly as you can, and then test out, is there some like validity to your idea, which I thought was really good because I think a lot of us can kind of get stuck in that like ideation phase where like we just keep thinking about it without actually ever like taking action or creating something. So I think this kind of like helps you get over that.
Very cool. Cool. So yeah, I had a question that I want to ask, but you know what? I'm gonna introduce the question, and I want you guys to think about it over the week and come back to us next week. And it's a little bit unrelated. And the question is, what is your favorite movie series and why? And it could be a series. It doesn't have to have more than 2 sequels. Like 2 is fine. But I'm just really curious as to what everyone's answer is. And then maybe we can kind of use that as a topic of discussion to start the conversation next week, if that sounds okay. But if you guys want to go do it now, I'm down too.
I'm down for right now too. Well,
You got one right now?
I would say The Matrix.
Okay, why?
Matrix only because just the character development and of Neo, uh and uh just like him being a leader, a hero, uh him literally like not even existing in that world to like literally controlling it. Um that and the entertainment aspect of it too, but like I really like Neo as a character, and his development throughout the three series.
Okay.
Just where he literally started in the office to where like he meets the architect and like uh he sacrifices him. He did yeah, I think he sacrificed himself too. So
Spoiler alert, but that's fine. I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
sorry, shit.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine.
20-year-old movie, but
So, question for you then: which one's your favorite and why out of the series?
I don't. I really like the third one because of the storyline, where you realize like uh the whole attack of the machines is like a reoccurring thing, and um how he has the choice to like stop it instead he like stop the reoccurrence of the attacks or like work with the machines and stuff like that. I like the story part of that, but I think the first movie is definitely my favorite because like it's the first time you're seeing that world and just like I said, like just the way Neo goes from like sitting in that office to like who he becomes, like that's probably the biggest span of character development for me.
Mm,
Is that first movie?
cool. Cool. Um,
It's a
and
hard question, Dave.
it is a hard question. That's why you don't have to answer it now. Um, but I'll go next. And again, you don't have to answer it now. You can go next week. My favorite series, I just watched the majority of them. I got one left. Is the Rocky
Nice.
series?
Oh, Rocky.
Yeah. It's just I didn't realize this until now, but Rocky's actually not a movie about boxing. It's actually a movie about life. And so and specifically people who are broken in life. So you got um Rocky, Adrian, and Paulie, all with severe flaws, looked as kind of struggling in life, not knowing what to do. You got Rocky, who's like a 30-year-old boxer, 30's already past your prime, can't find a good trainer because his trainer looks at him and says, "Yo, you got heart, but you just keep fighting bums." You got Adrian, who is a very timid, closeted girl who's again 30, that hasn't had a boyfriend. She works in a pet shop, and you know what I mean, looked at as someone who's probably gonna die alone, you know. And then you got Paulie, a guy who works at a meat factory, who's Adrian's brother, and again, same thing, just unhappy with his life. Then Rocky gets a shot at the title just out of the blue, right out of like a plot armor, right? Let's call it what it is. And then the three of them come together, and it radically changes their lives, and you see how they change throughout the 5 movies. And so the first, I think they're, man, I would be lying if I told you that I didn't kind of cry throughout each one of them. The only one that didn't make me cry was the second one and the fourth one. But 1, 3, and 5, there was at least one scene that kind of shed a couple of tears for me. There are different instances in each one. I don't want to spoil anything, but I just, it's just an inspiring movie. And then apart from the story itself, the fact that Stallone wrote the movies, especially the first one, there's the first one specifically, in an apartment where he could close the window and the door from the bed. That's how small it was. He just wrote the movie. It got rejected a bunch of times, and finally was accepted. And he's like, I got to be the actor in it. I got to be the one that plays Rocky. I think there's a story about him having to sell his dog, that he had in real life, to make some money. I don't know, for something. Then he ended up buying it back once he made the money from the movie. Yeah, I don't know. I just it's gonna be a yearly thing for me around Christmas time to watch those movies, because the other interesting thing is almost all of them take place around Christmas. But yeah, it's got to be my favorite series, hands down. Soroy, Ruben, Andrew. Again, if you guys can't think of one now, that's fine. But if you want to go now, you can as well.
Mine would be Lord of the Rings.
Nice.
I think I like the sense of adventure. Like I like the cities are very well built. Like they're very large scale. Like I like the scenery, the shots. Uh, like some of like the statues they have in the city are like 10 stories tall and like that kind of stuff. I really enjoy like the size and the scale of some of the battles.
Mhm.
Is what I like.
Very cool.
And then I would say like number two is probably my favorite, just because like the battle scene is so great. And then like the third one, they kind of ruin it with the ghost. Like it didn't have the same satisfaction for me.
That's
But
fair.
like all three of them, I would say, are really good.
Cool. Um.
That's
I cried during Lord of the Rings
Uh,
when Gandalf went down fighting
oh
on the
yeah.
bridge. I actually cried. I remember that. I think when was I forget when it was, but I actually because I love wizards. Gandalf was the freaking shit in that movie, at least in the start. And yeah, when I actually thought he died, I was like fucking heartbroken.
What?
That
Go ahead. Yeah.
I don't know, I just loved Gandalf.
Yeah.
That scene and the scene where the orcs take the twins. I don't know, Soraya, if you remember that.
yeah,
The Hobbit twins.
Yeah, the
yeah.
Hobbit twins. Yeah, that was
Um.
a good scene too.
So, question for you then: why don't you use Keeper of the Light in Dota? He's a wizard, isn't he?
You know, every game I play, I freaking main wizards, but
Yeah, that's interesting.
the MOBAs, I don't know. I guess like
You always go with the
ADC is
bow.
more fun.
Yeah, the
Exactly.
bow characters like
Yeah,
Legolas, so it's
yeah.
interesting. Ruben, Andrew, you guys got an
Yeah.
answer? Or you need some time to
Yeah,
think
yeah,
about
yeah.
it.
I've been thinking about it, and the movie that impacted me the most, um, just because of the visuals and when I saw it in the theater, was Mad Max: Fury Road.
Cool.
I just remember watching those movies, like the originals with Mel Gibson. It was part of that era of kind of like 80s movies and these weird actors that were like in apocalyptic environments, kind of like Kurt Russell in Escape from LA or Escape from New York. But this was completely different. It was just cars and guns and I don't know the things that you would expect to like when you're at that young age.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the new one came out, the story with Furiosa and Max with what's his name, Tom Hardy
Mm-hmm.
and Charlize Theron, their performances were amazing. They used the same actor, the same villain from the original trilogy, and just there was like the chase, and there was a guy like with hanging from speakers and this truck. He's playing this guitar, and the guitar shoots out fire.
Yeah.
It's a mess,
Yeah.
but it's exactly what you'd expect from, I guess, the apocalypse. It's
Wow.
amazing.
Does it end the same way as the original?
No, I think it's just a continuation of the
It's a
story.
continuation. Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's kind of like a different take on it because the original trilogy with Mel Gibson ended, kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
But this one's I think they're starting again, and they're gonna do a new version with the young Furiosa, played by the girl from The Witch, Anna Taylor-Joy.
Mm-hmm. That was a good movie.
Yeah,
The
looking
Witch.
forward to that.
Cool. Andrew, you want to close us off? You got an idea? You need or you got a movie?
Yeah,
series?
I actually have two. One is Fast and Furious. That's
Nice.
because of my interest in automobile vehicles. Also, it had a strong culture of like loyalty and family, so I really like that. In terms of which one's my favorite, the first and second, because they were more oriented about cars and not just about like action and the rock and stuff like that. So I would go for the first and second movies. And then another movie that I'm inspired by is the Tyler Perry Medea series. And it's not necessarily the content of the movie, it's the concept of what he was able to do with the movies. And that was like to build up his portfolio and to build up his finances like his career until he's able to buy like a huge like studio in his hometown, and he's able to employ so many people, and he's able to be a person of color and like be a heavy hitter in the movie industry. So I really appreciate the Medea movies because of that.
Wow. Cool. I've never heard of that. Medea?
Yeah, it's on. There's a bunch of them on Netflix.
Where he plays like the women, the old.
Oh,
the
it's
old
a,
women.
it's a, the comedy movies. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I know of those. I haven't seen those. But cool. So who wants to think of a question for next week? You don't have to give it now, but like just think of it. Someone go next. Okay, Naz, you're choosing a question for next week. Cool.
Yeah. I'll choose.
All right, cool. We'll
I'll-
rotate.
Alright, I'll put some thought into it. Like
Yeah,
I would
yeah,
ask
yeah,
right
just-
now, like, you know. Yeah, let me put some questions because I don't want to ask like a very like
there's no pressure.
generic question, I guess.
Cool. All right, folks. Anything from the squad before we break?
Yeah, I did. Like based off like your question, like it's funny because it was one of the questions that my book asked me. But they asked a couple other ones. Um, so I can send a photo of that if you want.
Please.
'Cause I thought
Yeah.
the exercise was quite good. Because the 5 questions are like, who was your favorite teacher growing up and why? What was your favorite movie of all time? What do you love most about how your parents raised you? Which successful person do you look up to as a role model and why? And then for your kids, current or future, what lessons do you want to make sure they understand? And then after you like answer all these questions, they kind of tell you to go through your answers and like repeat like the keywords or like go through it and kind of see, and then like there's usually like a common theme,
Wow.
and then he's saying like that's kind of like your core value, like your one core value. So like for Fast and Furious, like maybe like it's loyalty or like family or something like that. Where like Lord of the Rings, I was like, oh, like I think it's like the sense of adventure and like traveling and things like that. So I thought that was interesting.
That is cool. Wow. I mean, if you guys want to do that exercise for next week, I'm down.
Yeah, I can send the photos if you want.
Yeah, just send a
of
photo
like
with
the
the 5
couple
questions,
pages.
and then we'll kind of share what our answers are.
Cool.
Cool. All right, cool. Well, I'll catch you guys later. Thank you for everyone that was listening. Thank you all, Naz, Roy, Andrew, Ruben, for joining and sharing your 2 cents, and participating in the conversations. Well, I hope you all had a Merry Christmas. Yeah, we're gonna talk to each other in the new year in 2021. So, yeah, I'll see you guys
New Year's,
then.
guys.
Happy New Year's. Don't wait to start your fucking resolution. Start now. I already started 16 days ago. So, I'm just doing that boot camp, you know what I mean, to get better habits and improve time management and whatnot. So, yeah, like don't wait for the new year. And again, sorry, Sora, you wanted to talk about that. I'll just end off on this last note. When I was running through a foot deep of snow, yesterday, it was the hardest run I've done. I've done a 10K run before. This was the hardest. I literally had to stop 3 times because you're literally creating your own path in the snow. I don't want to run on concrete because it's not good for your knees. You know what I mean? I like running on the field, and the field was completely untouched. So I created that path in the field, running around the soccer goalposts 5 times because it works out to be just over a mile. And that first mile was the first lap around was the hardest because I was making my own path. But when I went around the second, third, fourth time, sure, I was tired, and that's why I had to stop by the 3rd round. But it was a little bit easier because I had already created my own footprints. And that's really kind of like the game of life for innovation. You know what I mean? Because sometimes when you branch out and do your own thing, you have to carve your own path. So you don't have the footsteps to follow. But when you do that and you go about doing it again, you're able to easily replicate it a little bit quickly, and you carve a path for other people to follow suit. So I thought that was a cool metaphor. But yeah, and Soroy, the other thing, the reason why he's like, you chose a great time to do that thing. You could run on a treadmill, and that kind of stuff. I don't like running on the treadmill because, again, it's not the greatest on the joints. And I just thought it would be a harder challenge for me to overcome the harsh reality of nature. So when I see the snow coming down outside, I'm like, fuck, tomorrow's run's going to be a little bit rough. But again, that's another symbol for life and business. There are things that you can't control. What are you going to do to get around it, right? So what I do is I make sure that I run first thing in the morning, especially before the snow, because the soil would be a little bit rougher or like harder, versus running in the mud would just be nasty if I ran toward the evening, if it was a hotter day in the wintertime. But yeah, I don't know how it's gonna work on New Year's Day when it's freezing rain. I don't know. I don't know how that's going. I might just skate around. I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of why I just chose to do the 90-day boot camp now, because sometimes there isn't a better time. You just got to do it now, just like you said in your book, right? Instead of just festering and thinking about things, just take action. Seamus, very funny. You have 7 cents and you started your 2021 New Year's resolution back in 1999. Very nice. Anything else from the squad before we break? Good? All right, folks.
I'm good.
I'll catch y'all later. Have a happy New Year's. Again, start your resolutions early, okay?
Take care, guys. Happy New Year's.
Peace, guys.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Viewers, thanks for hanging out. Hopefully you got some value out of this. I'll catch y'all later, okay? Peace.